Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome to Afternoons on the Dove. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and today's a very special day because we welcome into the television studio and same time back in the radio studio our old friend, not old, but old. Old friend. Nisha Jackson's with us. Hi. Nice to have you back.
That was a lovely introduction.
Well, I was old.
Thank
We
you.
can't do that because everything we do with you is anti-old. But,
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Nisha heads up Ventana Wellness clinic here in Medford and has for quite a while. She's known as the hormone expert, not to mention all the other things that she deals with. And I know more about estrogen than any one man's supposed to know, but we're going to continue on it. Let me just say to our viewers and listeners today, you're welcome to join the conversation. The phone number is 776-5368. We welcome you anywhere along the line. If you have any questions for Nisha, here's a great opportunity for you to call and ask your questions. And again, don't forget that on the television side, you'll be able to see this again tonight at 6 and at 10:30. And of course, you can go to the Dove website at thedove.us and watch it anytime. After the show, it'll be there on YouTube. But Nisha, we want to talk about thyroids, a huge issue.
It is.
Continues to be.
Right. It's a mystery. It's a mystery issue for people.
It is.
It
Why?
is because there's so much misinformation out there on thyroid disease. And I think what we're not actually keeping up with from a medical professional standpoint is how the environment could be affecting our thyroid function.
The environment.
The environment.
The ozone layer.
You know, a study, a study just came out this summer, early summer, that showed that fluoride, which is actually used in pesticides, is actually damaging the functioning of thyroid for many, many people.
Whoa.
And so, you know, many people, Perry, think about thyroid as something that's just your metabolism or helps you control weight. But the thyroid affects 200 different areas in your body. So if you're functioning on the low normal range, you could have as many as 200 functions not working well in your body, not just your metabolism and your energy, but your cholesterol, your heart disease prevention risk. There's so many different areas, the healthiness of your skin.
Male and female?
Male and female. And when the thyroid's not working right, it can affect other endocrine glands like your sex hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and also your adrenal glands, your stress glands. So it's pretty dynamic.
Ooh. So, how do we know if our thyroid's healthy?
Well, we're going to talk about that today. We're going to get into the specifics about, you know, how do you get diagnosed and what is some of the misinformation that's out there, especially with the testing end of it, because the testing end of it has even changed over time. And so, unless you're really studying and looking at abnormal thyroid levels, and it's something that you do for fun, like I do, you might not be keeping up with how the reference ranges have changed on the test. So there, you could be low thyroid, but maybe not being diagnosed. So I want to talk about that today for sure.
Okay.
The other thing I want to talk about right now is this whole fluoride issue, because right now the average American is ingesting 4 times more fluoride than we were in 1940.
Is that like through the water? Or?
It's through the water, but it's also through our foods. Because pesticides there are some pesticides that are used on crops today that much of our food that we're eating actually has fluoride in it. So we're getting fluoride from a couple different sources. Soda pops have fluoride in it. Some foods actually have fluoride in it, packaged foods. So I think we have to start paying attention to that, because what they're seeing is the higher the fluoride level is in a person, the lower their thyroid function is. There's a direct relationship between those two. So I think it's important to be careful about maybe switching over to filtered water, not just using the Brita or the Pure filters. They don't filter out the fluoride, but actually using like a reverse osmosis or bottled water. Bottled water, like Arrowhead water, has no fluoride in it, and there's other bottled waters that do. Or just getting a filter on your system at home, at least to cut the fluoride, because we don't need that much, even for prevention of cavities, which is why in 1940 we started putting fluoride in our water, thinking, well, that really does help cavities, but you only need a minuscule amount each day to help prevent cavities.
What about in the toothpaste?
And in the toothpaste, I would recommend, because we get so much fluoride just environmentally, I would recommend that you actually don't get any other fluoride added. So I would recommend going to a toothpaste that doesn't have fluoride in it, because we're getting so much of it in other places.
All right, let me just say to our viewers and listeners, you're welcome to join us. The phone number is 776-5368. And if you have any questions for Nisha Jackson, concerning thyroids. Today is your day. And I know a lot of people are concerned about the thyroids, especially ladies, because I know that you deal with that and you test for that when it comes to not only hormones, but just in weight control as well.
Right. You know, thyroid it's just, I get so excited talking about thyroid,
Wow.
just so excited because...
Whatever your thing is, Nisha.
You know, I know it's kind of strange, but it is really important for people to have a normal thyroid because you feel better. You feel less depressed. Your skin looks better. You age better. Your skin doesn't look as wrinkled. And I know those seem like kind of superficial things, but they're important. Mm-hmm. You have less skin-related problems. Your brain is more clear. You can find words better when you're talking. And of course, the weight gain is a huge issue. Many people, many medical providers out there often don't think thyroid when cholesterol goes up. So let's say you're tired and you're a little grouchy. Maybe you have insomnia. All three of those things could be related to low thyroid. But if you go into the medical office, often what is happening is that if your cholesterol is elevated, instead of maybe looking at an underlying problem like low thyroid, we just give the patient cholesterol-lowering drugs, which sometimes is really important to take because they can help save your life. But the problem is that maybe it's not really high cholesterol from your diet or family history. Maybe it's high cholesterol because your thyroid's low. So why not fix the thyroid and then have less symptoms overall? So that's kind of some of the information I think is really important to get out there.
You also have a guest coming up a little bit later on, and she deals with this.
Yes. Mary Shoman is a national health advocate. She's a patient advocate. She actually had low thyroid 20-some years ago. She was diagnosed and was so frustrated by the lack of information that is out there. So she has a very popular interactive website that, you know, millions of people have visited. And she really keeps up on the most up-to-date information, and the thyroid experts that are out there post on her site, and it's just a great website to go to. So I thought it would be helpful to bring her on today because she is a patient advocate and somebody that I think would be helpful to get more information from her about thyroid.
All right, that's coming up a little bit. In the meantime, if you have any questions for Nisha, and Nisha heads up Ventana Wellness Clinic, and the website, help me with that.
It's really easy. It's just ventanawellness.com.
ventanawellness.com. You can go there and check out a lot of things that we're talking about today. You know, what happens for whatever reason they medically kill your thyroid, or you have to have it removed?
Right.
What happens?
So if you have, let's say you go into the office and you have a goiter, you have an enlarged thyroid that's picked up on an exam, or you could be having some really unusual symptoms and your thyroid tests come back abnormal. And let's say the next evaluation would be an ultrasound of your thyroid. If the ultrasound shows something abnormal, the next step would be a thyroid biopsy. The thyroid biopsy, if it shows abnormal cells like precancerous cells or cancerous cells, then they usually go to the next step, which is either radiating the thyroid, where they actually kill the thyroid, or remove the thyroid lobe, you know, on each side. So it really depends on what your diagnosis is. Now, that's if you actually have a problem in the gland. You can have abnormal blood tests and not have a problem in the gland. That would be just for people who have thyroid cancer. And it's a rough road, as you probably know.
I know. We've experienced it in our family. All right. You can call us. The number is 776-5368. Nisha Jackson's in the house taking your phone calls, and she heads up Ventana Wellness. Hi, Cheryl. What's your question for Nisha today?
Hi, Nisha. I had a question, and then I'm going to get off and listen to you on the radio.
Great.
Can you please explain how thyroid affects the heart?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Cheryl, thanks for your call today. The thyroid is real important because what the thyroid does is it's your engine, and so it has a lot to do with your metabolism. And when your thyroid is running low, what it does is it changes the way the liver is actually able to absorb and excrete cholesterol. So all hormones actually start from cholesterol, which is something that most people don't even understand. So when you have, and this can happen often even in taking low cholesterol medications, it lowers your cholesterol, which if your cholesterol actually goes too low, you will have an inability to make some of the very vital hormones that you need for balance. So there's a very strong correlation between the manufacturing of thyroid hormones with low cholesterol or the over-manufacturing of hormones from high cholesterol. So the thyroid, the feedback mechanism that goes from the thyroid to the brain is often hampered when cholesterol goes up. when the thyroid goes down, the cholesterol continues to climb. So there's a very strong correlation between increased heart disease risk and low thyroid, which in my opinion is one of the most important reasons to optimize thyroid function instead of just continuing to give people more and more drugs for heart disease prevention. Actually go in and treat the underlying condition. So that's the connection between the two, and that was a great question. Thanks for your call.
All right, Nisha's in the house. If you have any questions for her, 776-5368. Let's go to Janice. Hi, Janice. What's your question for Nisha today?
I didn't really have a question. However, years ago, I diagnosed myself from a magazine and went and told my doctor that I had thyroid problems. Because they kept experimenting. Yeah, I out of 10 symptoms, I had 9.
Wow.
Anyway, they did finally, and I had a wonderful oncologist later on that I was getting a goiter, and he made me swallow radioactive stuff, and that killed my goiter because I didn't have insurance and money for surgery and everything.
Right.
I've been on levothyroxine for 30 years, and I do very well. I have my blood tested sometimes 3 or 4 times a year because I know my body.
Right. Well, good
However,
for you.
I want to encourage people, don't be afraid to walk up to your doctor and say, this isn't right, here's what's wrong with me, because I was exercised hard to lose my weight and everything. I was the firmest fat person you ever saw. It still didn't help.
Well, Janice, I think your point is really, really good and very important, and we're going to get into that even more today with our guest, who is a patient advocate, and she really encourages either her listeners or the people that visit her website to give more information about how do you ask for the right tests.
Right.
And I think that's the key.
I have great respect for the medical field. After all, I'm not a doctor, but I know my body better than anybody.
Atta girl.
That's right.
Thanks, Janice.
Well, that's a very good comment and very helpful.
All right, before we take a break, she mentioned something there, and that was the symptoms. Are there some obvious symptoms that your thyroid's going wrong?
Yes.
Fatigue?
Yes. The number one symptom of low thyroid is fatigue. And I always like to clarify fatigue because it seems to be the most common within the fatigue category is something that I call hitting the wall at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just like you're done.
How about 1?
Well, you would be 1 because you get up at like 2 in the morning. So, but hitting the wall at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or just saying, you know what, I get through my day and I just can't get through my evening. And so that's a classic sign of low thyroid. But also bags underneath your eyes or puffiness underneath your eyes is another one. Of course, high cholesterol, depression, inability to sleep at night, insomnia, frequency of urination for men and women. That's often a sign of low thyroid. There's so many signs: dryness of the skin, cracked elbows, cracked heels from the dryness of the skin. Some people have profuse sweating, which is common with low thyroid. So anyway, the list goes on. And cravings.
Cravings.
Irritability.
Well, let's say so far
blah, blah, blah.
I'm really failing this test. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Your guest is standing by to go on the air. Mary Shoman will be with us, and we'll be talking a little bit further about this. In the meantime, if you have any questions, join us. The phone number is 776-5368. Nisha Jackson's here with Ventana Wellness to take your questions. Today's topic is thyroids. Give us a call, 776-5368. We'll be right back.
Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove. Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on the Dove.
Well, we're back, and we're delighted to have in the studio with us today Nisha Jackson, and she heads up Ventana Wellness, certainly no stranger to the Dove audience, and we're talking about a very important topic today, thyroid. And you have Mary Shoman on the phone, or we have her standing by. And why don't you introduce Mary today?
Yes, today we're talking about thyroid, one of my most favorite topics to talk about because people get so much better when their thyroid's optimized. So I love talking about thyroid because I love making people feel, or helping people feel better. Today we have a specialist on the air with us. She's been on the show before with us, and I really appreciate her very interactive website. Her name is Mary Shoman. She is a patient advocate for thyroid problems. She actually has thyroid problems herself that were diagnosed in 1995. She's gone on to develop this incredible website. It's thyroid-info.com. And she's developed this website over time to really be able to give people more information about how do you get your thyroid tested, what are some of the more in-depth answers about how to get your thyroid balanced. And I really appreciate that she's put this site together because it's one of the best websites I've ever seen for thyroid information. Also, she sort of debunks some of the, sort of the misinformation that's out there on low thyroid. She's also written multiple books, including the Menopause Thyroid Solution and also the Thyroid Diet. So welcome to the show, Mary. I appreciate you coming on again.
Thank you, Nisha. It's a pleasure to be on with you.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you all doing?
I'm doing really well.
Terrific.
So we were just talking prior to you coming on the show about some of the environmental things that are happening with low thyroid today, specifically fluoride, and some of the problems with fluoride being in our water and fluoride being used in pesticides for spraying our crops, and how we really have so much more fluoride in our system today than we ever have before, and how the studies are now starting to show that the higher the fluoride content in your body, potentially the lower the thyroid functioning. And I just think that that's an important piece of information to get out there.
Well, the fluoride issue is one that a lot of people are simply not aware of. I mean, there have been concerns about fluoride in the past for a variety of reasons, and they're often dismissed as being, conspiracy theories, and so people don't always pay attention when they hear about fluoride. But there's some very good science behind the concerns about fluoride and thyroid. Fluoride, for years, was used as a treatment for overactive thyroid. So it was actually used to slow down the thyroid in people who had hyperthyroid or an overactive, functioning thyroid gland.
Right.
So we know that it had a medical use. Now, of course, fluoride is an industrial waste product that is a byproduct of a variety of chemical processing. And so these chemical companies are selling it to our water supply and municipal authorities, who then put it in the water, thinking that it's especially good for our teeth. But at the same time, there's certainly questions as to whether it really is useful for the teeth, but we know that it acts as an anti-thyroid promoter of slow thyroid. It slows the thyroid down. So the more we drink fluoridated water, the more we swallow products that include fluoride. Fluoride is in tea, it's in our food supply, et cetera. The more chance we have of adding to the overall burden on the thyroid, because fluoride is one of a number of environmental estrogens, chemicals, toxins, et cetera, that have an effect of slowing down the thyroid.
I always think it's interesting, Mary, when you actually step back from this, and this actually happens in so many areas of medicine, when you actually step back and you look at it, you go, this is crazy. Why are we doing this? Just like what you said, that it used to be used for a treatment to shut down the thyroid. So why in the world would we have it in all of these sources that we're being exposed to? I actually want to take a caller. This is a hot topic, and I know we're going to have a lot of calls today, so I want to go to a caller right now.
Yeah,
and
Tricia
see
has
what
a call
she
about
has.
thyroid, the connection of thyroid and heart problems, right, Tricia?
Well, yeah, it was about rhythm. I was wondering about how it affects the rhythm. Does it cause it to change? Does it go up? Does it go down? I mean, if somebody was having excessive hunger and not gaining weight, actually losing weight, and then having heart irrhythm.
Yes. That's a really good question. Mary, do you want to answer that about the connection between low thyroid or even high thyroid, because it can happen either way, and the change in the heart rhythm?
Sure, absolutely. Thyroid is very connected to heart rhythm, and in fact, the heart and the brain are the two areas of the body that are the most sensitive to thyroid hormone. So when we have too much thyroid hormone, we're overactive or hyperthyroid, we can have rapid weight loss, very high heart rate, high blood pressure, and oftentimes people who have very high heart rate and the hyperthyroid situation will also report having palpitations. They may have even atrial fibrillation or supraventricular contractions. They can have all sorts of unusual heart rhythm irregularities. With hypothyroidism, we sometimes see very slow heart rates, people that are not marathon runners but have extremely low heart rates. Sometimes people with hypothyroidism seem to have a tendency more towards mitral valve syndrome and irregularities in heart rhythm that include palpitations and flutters, and also in some cases very low blood pressure that, again, is not consistent with someone being an extremely fit athlete. So we see a lot of heart irregularities on both sides of the thyroid spectrum, so it definitely is something to be checked out.
Thanks for your call, Tricia. I think it's, this information, it's so hard to get your head and body around this information in one short show, because I'm just sitting here thinking, Mary, that in talking about the heart rhythms and talking about low thyroid, it would be almost impossible not to introduce in the whole stress hormone situation and how it interacts with the thyroid. Because so many times what happens is that as the stress level goes up, it reduces your body's ability to convert one thyroid hormone into the other thyroid hormone, which is the active thyroid T3. So, it becomes a little bit more complicated to talk about on a radio program, but it's so important to look at, because that alone could be causing changes in the heart rhythm.
Exactly. And then when you add in the fact that thyroid becomes even more common in women over 40, when we start to see the changes in hormones, the perimenopausal shifts in the estrogen and progesterone.
Right.
And that is also a time when women also will report more heart rhythm changes that are oftentimes due to those hormone shifts. So the thyroid and the reproductive hormones can come into play and cause changes to the heart rhythms as well.
Well, you can see if you just paint the picture of a female, because of course this happens to men too, but if you paint the picture of a female, it's kind of disturbing, right? You feel tired, you're putting on weight, you're not sleeping, your heart's racing, you just think it's stress, you don't know what to do, you're going into the office says your thyroid tests are normal, and which we're going to get to in just a second. It's kind of a scary picture for women.
Absolutely, because we are so often being told that, well, at your age or at your state in life, or you've just had a baby, or you're perimenopausal, you're in menopause, you're over 60, of course you're tired, exhausted, stressed, gaining weight, losing your eyebrows, losing your hair, feeling depressed.
Oh, yes, I forgot that as a symptom. Losing the outer 1/3 of your eyebrows is another sign of low thyroid. I forgot to mention that one, Mary.
Really?
Thanks for bringing that up.
I didn't know that.
Exactly.
You start using the eye pencil.
That's what I said. I tell women, if you're drawing in those eyebrows, it's time to get the thyroid checked. And, we have so many people who are being told that these kinds of symptoms, these emotional and mental and exhaustion and fatigue, they're being told, well, this is lifestyle issues. These are choices that you're making that are affecting you. I've even heard one doctor tell a woman who was gaining weight. She was a marathon runner gaining weight. He said, well, you have fork and mouth disease. You need to get off the couch and get moving. She was running, 40 miles a week to train for the marathon.
That's just not right. Well, interestingly enough, even being a marathon runner, that kind of ties back into this stress hormone overproduction. Sometimes what happens over a period of time, I love talking about stress hormones and the adrenal function, which is your stress gland. Over a period of time, what happens is, even to marathon runners, the excessive production of cortisol, which is sort of your fight and flight hormone, just the excessive production of cortisol can cause a disruption in your thyroid hormones, which would make a marathon runner gain weight.
Exactly. In fact, this concept that we have that, you're not getting benefit from exercise unless you're, passed out, exhausted, or, falling over, is actually counterproductive. And in fact, sometimes it's interesting, women that I've talked with have switched from intense over-exercise to a gentler form of exercise, more yoga, more gentle walking. They start to find that the pounds fall off.
Right. Isn't that interesting? Now, the one type of exercise I'm going to remind our listening audience to absolutely not do is to do intense exercise while you have your earphones in, listening to music while you're answering emails.
Exactly.
Now, that sounds kind of funny, like who would do that? There are a lot of people who do that, or they're watching the news on TV. Okay, that's disturbing. That's causing your cortisol to go up, and cortisol is going to make you fat. So you don't want to have an excessive production of cortisol. You don't want to have an underproduction of cortisol. You want to exercise and really focus on being healthy. So going out for a walk outside, get away from the world for just a little bit and exercise, because it really does help your hormones be more balanced.
I agree completely. If exercise is stressing you out more than it's relaxing you, then it's probably raising your cortisol and working against your overall health and even the ability to lose weight, especially in the belly.
That's right. One thing I do want to talk about, because I think that the range of thyroid tests is very important to bring up, because this is the most frustrating thing for patients today when they're trying to figure out if they need to be tested for thyroid, and what do those test results mean. So I want to talk a little bit about that, because I know you have a lot to say about thyroid tests and what tests should be ordered and how those tests are interpreted. And I think one of the best things that you have as far as information on your website is to define what those tests are and how important it is to get you into the, excuse me, the optimal range rather than just anywhere in the range, because the range is very broad. And who wants to be on the low end of the normal range? The low end means deficiency. The high end means excess. Who wants to be on either end? Why not be in the optimal range for thyroid?
Right, and right now, I mean, when we look at hormone levels, including thyroid, from 20 and 30 years ago, you know, they create normal ranges based on the current population. But our current population is filled with toxins in our air, food, water. We live stressful lives. So overall, our hormone levels are probably not where they would have been 20 or 30 years ago. So the whole population is probably starting at a point of being somewhat depleted. So if you're at the low end of normal in terms of your hormone supplies by today's standards, by many more open-minded interpretations, you are already in a serious deficiency situation.
Now, the National Association of Endocrinologists actually changed the upper reference range for the TSH. Now, the TSH is a hormone that comes from the brain that interacts with the actual thyroid gland to help regulate whether you make more or less of the thyroid. That's kind of a simple way of describing it. So the standard of care, or what seems to be most common in medicine, shouldn't be standard of care, but what seems to be most common in medicine is just to order a TSH. But that doesn't actually tell you what circulating thyroid hormones are in your system, which kind of leaves the puzzle sort of undone, so to speak.
Yes, the TSH is picking up, as you said, on that one brain messenger hormone. So it's essentially taking the temperature of what's going on in the bloodstream as far as thyroid hormones and releasing or holding back on releasing this hormone to be able to give us more or less. But a lot of the more open-minded doctors that really understand hormone balance and optimization of thyroid function are testing the free T4 and free T3, which are the measurements of the actual circulating thyroid hormones in the body. They're also checking antibodies, thyroid antibodies, in order to determine if you have the autoimmune diseases that may cause thyroid problems in the first place. And they are also checking the reverse T3, which is a measurement of the body's ability to properly produce the right kind of hormone that we need to utilize. And many of the most really cutting-edge doctors are also measuring things like the ferritin, the vitamin D, and some of the other hormones, the DHEA, the pregnenolone, to get a complete picture of what's going on as far as the stress, the adrenals. They're looking at maybe a 24-hour saliva cortisol as well.
Well, and I want to interrupt you here. We're going to go to a quick break, but I want to come back and talk about the testing and how all of those tests actually interact with the thyroid, and getting the whole picture is what really makes the difference. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about that. And
if you have any questions for Nisha or Mary, you can give us a call. The phone number is 776-5368. We can conference you in. Take advantage of both Mary Shoman and Nisha Jackson here on The Dove. 776-5368. We'll be right back.
Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on The Dove. Follow the conversation. This is Afternoon on The Dove.
And we're back. We're delighted to have back in the studio with us today Nisha Jackson. She heads up Ventana Wellness, and you can go to ventanawellness.com and check out all the things that she provides to her clinic. And today we're talking about thyroids, the importance of thyroids, an incredible topic. There's no way you can cover it in one day.
I know, you really can't.
Some people get high on sugar, some people get high on coffee. She gets high on thyroids. So anyway.
Or any hormone. Any hormone. I get excited about all of them.
Okay, well, all right. And your special guest, Mary Shoman.
Yes, Mary, thank you so much for joining us today. We're talking with Mary Shoman. She's a patient advocate. She's actually was diagnosed with low thyroid in 1995. Was kind of frustrated about the lack of information and the lack of interpretation of lab tests related to the thyroid. And she started a very nice website, which is probably the best website I've ever seen for low thyroid as far as giving people more information, really being a patient advocate. That website is thyroid-info.com. She's also written multiple books. One of the books I want to talk about today that I think everybody should have, that either has a family history of low thyroid. By the way, thyroid disease is very familial. So if you have a family history of low thyroid, you should be tested. But if you have a family history of low thyroid, or you've been diagnosed with low thyroid, or you think you might be at risk for low thyroid, I'd recommend that you get this book. It's called The Thyroid Diet. This is an excellent book for managing your metabolism and trying to get a handle on your weight loss. Mary, I really appreciate this book that you've written. So welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Nisha.
So I want to talk a little bit more about those tests that we talked about prior to the break, because you had mentioned ferritin, which is the storage of iron, which can be when ferritin is low, which is really common with teenage girls. Well, it's actually common with many different people, but teenage girls are very much at risk for low ferritin, which is the storage of iron. And when your ferritin is low, it often will hamper your body's ability to make one thyroid transition into another. I'm trying to keep this simple. Your T4 thyroid turning into T3 thyroid via the liver. So can we just talk about that for a minute? Because there's a lot of people feeling really sluggish and tired because their storage of iron is too low.
Exactly, and it's not one that is typically tested. When people will say, you know, I think I'm feeling tired, or my thyroid medicine isn't working, I don't feel like I'm getting as much out of it, or I'm exhausted still even after treatment. One of the things that the more savvy integrative practitioners are doing is testing that ferritin, that stored iron, in order to get a sense, because it is so essential to proper hormone balance and to thyroid balance in particular. And what we're finding is, while a normal range of ferritin can range, it's a very broad range. I mean, some labs might have a range of anywhere from, 15 to 90. A lot of the practitioners that I've been talking to and interviewing and such are saying, look, when we want to see somebody with a thyroid issue feel well, we want to get that ferritin up over 50 or over 60. And if there's somebody that's experiencing hair loss, which is very common in a lot of women with thyroid issues, and in particular older women over 50 and 60 who start to notice a lot of thinning, they even want that ferritin a slightly bit higher, maybe 70 or 80, to really optimize their function and have them feel well and live well.
You know, that brings up a whole nother topic I just want to touch on really quick, not to make this whole topic more complicated than it already is. But when you have low iron, when you have low storage of iron, it's the ferritin level that you actually need to be looking at, not just a CBC, which looks at hemoglobin and hematocrit. You really need to be looking also at the ferritin level if you're trying to figure out the fatigue and the hair loss and possibly why the thyroid's not functioning correctly. But the other thing I just started thinking about is how important it is to have a diet that's good. And I want to talk about that because the diet's so huge when it comes to thyroid, because you want to be avoiding foods that may be causing your thyroid to not function optimally, but you also want to make sure your gut is really healthy, because if you don't have a healthy gut, you're not going to absorb the nutrients that your thyroid even needs to function optimally.
Exactly, which is one of the reasons why I think a lot of thyroid patients seem to do better and feel well when they are addressing any kind of imbalance in the gut. So people are incorporating more probiotic-rich foods and even probiotic supplements into their diet, so they're putting some good bacteria back in. In some cases, digestive enzymes are a help for people so that they're able to properly metabolize the food and get the nutritional value from their foods. So those are two very important things, but also avoiding inflammatory foods. And for most of us, that's any food we have sensitivities to or allergies to. For many people, it's the wheat and gluten products. In some cases, dairy can be very inflammatory. And, of course, sugar and processed foods, which we know are some of the worst foods for us in terms of the ability to cause inflammation, which then makes it that much harder to address thyroid issues and all the autoimmune conditions that seem to go along with them in many cases.
So what are some of the foods, Mary, that you would suggest that would be healthy thyroid foods that people could start incorporating into their diet, besides trying to get all this junk stuff out of their diet, especially soda, getting soda out of the diet, not only because of the sugar, but because of the fluoride?
Yes, well, soda with the sugar and the fluoride, but also diet soda, not really any better because of all the artificial sweeteners, which we now are seeing are linked to weight gain instead of weight loss. And the aspartame appears to have some connections to the trigger of autoimmunity and autoimmune disease, which is the major cause of thyroid problems in the United States as it is. So we definitely want to get all the sodas, whether they're sugar or sugar-free, out of the picture. Things that are thought to be very good for the thyroid are foods that are rich in B vitamins and zinc. and selenium. So one of the things that a lot of folks with thyroid issues like to do is make sure they have some Brazil nuts. They are very rich in selenium and one of the only dietary sources of selenium. So we look at that as a sort of thyroid healthy food. Some people are deficient in iodine and benefit from incorporating iodine-rich foods into their diet. And so there we see the seaweed salads and some of the iodine-rich seafood can be helpful to the thyroid gland as well. And then we need to watch and be careful on the opposite side of the goitrogenic foods or the anti-thyroid foods. These are foods that have the capability of slowing down the thyroid when eaten in large quantities or eaten too much quantity raw. And these are the cruciferous vegetable family, so cabbage, cauliflower, kale, broccoli, they all fall into that category. And so we're not saying not to eat them, but rather if you steam them or cook them, that helps take away some of the goitrogenic potential, some of the potential to slow the thyroid down. And what you don't want to do necessarily if you have a thyroid condition or you want to be careful about is a raw juicing diet, because most of the raw juicing diets are going to take a lot of these vegetables and concentrate them very intensively. And so people may be thinking they're doing something very good for themselves. At the same time, they're getting a large glass of anti-thyroid goitrogens every day, very concentrated. So you've got to be careful.
You know, that's been something that people have used for years, so that's good information to have. Again, the thyroid diet, that was a book authored by Mary Shoman, our guest. You can go to her website, thyroid-info.com, and look at the books that she has available, but specifically the thyroid diet if you want more information on what to eat and what not to eat. But I want to go to our callers. Sharon, you're on the air. Welcome to the show. What's your question for Mary today?
Hi.
Good morning.
This is Sharon.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I have a cousin who is a biochemist in California who I was sharing with him. I had been feeling bad, talking about my thyroid and my blood sugar and how I don't have diabetes, but I'm hypoglycemic. And he said that when they want to perform on lab rats studies on diabetes and also paralleling with the fluoride and the thyroid, he was telling me about that, all they feed a rat is carbonated water, not pop, carbonated water to induce diabetes on the rat. And I just feel the fluoride in the water, the carbonated the drinks that we're drinking and everything, and I've quit drinking any carbonated beverages, anything with carbonation, since then, and I can't tell you how much better I feel.
I totally agree. You know, I quit drinking Diet Pepsi years ago, and there was a significant difference in how even my brain functioned. So I think this is really good information, Sharon, to give out to our audience today on avoiding even the carbonated water. So I think
seltzer water. A lot of people think they're drinking seltzer water, and that's better too. It's not. He said it's not pop they feed the rats. It's carbonated water.
All right. Well, thanks for calling in today. I appreciate your information. So are there just some closing comments that you want to add that you think is really important for our audience to hear, Mary, regarding the thyroid?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that a lot of people make the mistake of is they get the notice from their doctor, the phone call or the letter that just says your thyroid is fine, your levels are normal. And I encourage people to go a step further and get the actual report. Find out what levels your doctor is using, what the numbers were for your test, what specific tests you had, what the range was at your laboratory, and then check it against some of the more integrative and more patient-oriented sites. Go to Nisha's site, go to my site, get information about what is actually optimal versus what's in the normal range, because being told it's normal is not enough information anymore on which to say, yeah, I don't have a thyroid problem.
Right. And I think that what's also important to say, Mary, I appreciate that piece of information because that's huge. Again, our website is thyroid-info.com. But I think what's also important is not everybody's a thyroid expert. Not everybody keeps up and is what Perry referred to as a hormone junkie. Not everybody is into that. And so I think it's important to be a patient advocate like you are and advocate for yourself and get more information. Again, her website is wonderful if you want to get more information about the specific tests and the interpretation of those tests, what the ranges really are. And like you said, asking for the actual test results, I think does make a big difference.
Absolutely. It really helps a lot of people understand the difference between what somebody thinks is normal and what might actually be optimal as far as how well they feel and how they live.
And one last comment, too, for men and women. What happens is when you age and your own hormones are declining, think thyroid, because just because your ovarian or testicular hormones are dropping with age, it can negatively affect the thyroid and vice versa. So really looking at the whole picture, I think, is what the take-home message is today, is look at the whole picture of hormones rather than just taking another medication for your symptoms.
Absolutely. A lot of people think they're going through menopause or andropause, and it's actually a thyropause that can be addressed fairly easily if they only looked and thought about their thyroid.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you again so much for joining us today, Mary. Your information is always so helpful and so good. Again, the website, thyroid-info.com, if you want to get more information about thyroid disease.
And again, if you want to see the program again and refer to a little bit later on, it'll be on at 6 o'clock tonight, again, 10:30 on the Dove TV. You can go to the Dove website and watch it on YouTube if you want to do that. And certainly check out Nisha's website. You test for thyroid there at
Yes, we
Ventana
do all
Wellness.
those tests we talked about, and I think it is important to get that whole picture.
All right. Thanks, Nisha. See you as soon as you get back from all your travels again.
Yeah, right.
And again, VentanaWellness.com. We'll see you tomorrow.